Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jim Stroud Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Special guest, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Hey Jim, hey listeners. My name's Josh, and I'm currently working in executive HR for a small US-based marketing agency as the head of HR, head of people, head of culture, whatever it's called these days. There seems to be a million different titles floating around. But ultimately, the key takeaway is that people, capability, culture, recruitment, people development, all of these things is wrapped up in my role. And I have fallen in love with it over the years. I originally started out in the military. So I joined the army in Australia when I was 18,
Wow.
and I was in the military for 10 years. So I went through kind of like the West Point equivalent in the US. So studied business. So fairly non-traditional HR path. And then I got to the point where, yeah, I wanted a bit of a change of scenery, and this job kind of landed in my lap at this marketing agency doing marketing. So it was a bit of a 180-degree turn, but um, I loved it very much and eventually found my way back to full circle into people, culture, HR space in this company. And now over the years, particularly the last 12 to 24 months, just seeing how AI has been shaping a lot of great things across work, but a lot of scary things that are taking place as well, especially when it comes to recruitment and, yeah, the current process with regards to how candidates are selected and how people are paired to job opportunities and the issues being faced at the moment. So that's really what I'm very interested in tackling and exploring. And in the last 6 months, I've co-founded a company with a colleague in the US called SuperHired that is directly aiming at challenging this paradigm of recruitment and how AI should really be an augmentation into this process rather than what we're seeing, which is completely taking over and causing lots of issues.
Yeah, cool, cool. You can't get away from AI no matter how hard you try in any
Hmm.
conference, any conversation connected to recruitment, it always comes up. There was an interesting
Mm.
conversation I was having. I believe you and I were chatting about this at one point.
Mm.
Let's say that someone is a small business owner and they hear about AI, running recruiting for all these big organizations. If you're a small company, do you think that AI is really needed to recruit?
Yes. Well, I think it's not needed, but it's an augmentation.
Hmm.
My position with AI is, as it should be, I believe, in every condition, in every circumstance, is that it's a tool that should be wielded and leveraged to augment a process, a system which is already operationally tight and
Okay.
achieving the outcome that you intend it to achieve. The problem with recruitment, whether it's at a small company or at a big company, is that the principles that run that engine are fundamentally flawed and broken. And it's hard to get away from AI because a lot of the applicant tracking systems that we use, like you said, are now starting to embed these systems and embed the use of AI. So you can't really get away with it and or get away from it. So as a small business owner, you're forced to have to use it, which is fine. But the lesson and the focus should be before I dive headfirst into using Claude, ChatGPT, or even purpose-built off-the-shelf AI tools that are meant for hiring, or even an applicant tracking system like the common ones that you see, Greenhouse, Ashby, Bamboo, etc. They're all starting to jump on this AI bandwagon. So before you start getting involved in that space, we need to step back and think, what is the outcome here of a really effective hiring process at my company? What is it aiming to achieve? And a good answer will be agnostic of speed, time to hire, and these metrics which reinforce things that are not indicative of long-term fit or matching context, and
Hmm.
doing the discovery to ensure that there is a link between what a candidate wants from work and what we know we need in this seat, in this team, in this company to drive success and to deliver value for our clients and for the company. So it's a discovery process that needs to happen before we add AI into the mix. And it can be used to help, but you need to get back to square one first and really ask yourself some of these core questions.
And I imagine some of those core questions are, yes, we can automate it, but do we really need to automate it? Just because we can doesn't mean we should. What
Right.
do you think are some steps of things that should never be automated, and maybe some things that should always be automated?
Yeah, well, in the space of building a team, and increasing the talent density of your organization through hiring, which is the ultimate North Star of recruitment, right? It's
Yeah.
increasing talent that wants to work in the context of your company. Um, with that as the North Star, you need to understand the context of your company. So you need to do the research. You need to do the
Mm.
hours. You need to resource time and effort to interview people, to do qualitative and quantitative research with your hiring managers, with the capability leaders, with people in the company, both high up and in the trenches, as to what is our work product that we're offering people, both in the business now and when we want to attract people to the company. And that's a very labor intensive and should be a human-led manual process because there are a lot of nuances with how you interview and how you ask questions and how you gather this data that for now where we're at, AI is not in a position to lead that effort. Although what I would encourage people to think about is how can you augment data capture and data synthesis when you do have the data? So when you capture all of this information using AI tools and using large language models and having a database where you can make a quick reference and analysis to different discovery calls and surveys and everything else, that's a good and effective use of data, but it's an augmentation. For the candidate side of things, that's a big part of the process that I'm seeing over-indexing of the use of AI. So I'm seeing tools that come out now which really hijack the entire recruitment experience so far as basically driving the entire sourcing process of finding people on the internet, which is inherently flawed in and of itself because there is a very limited pool of data that all these tools and all these large language models can access when it comes to people. And it's
Mm.
typically stuff that's already publicly available, such as on your LinkedIn or stuff that you've shared. So the signal is very small. We're playing at the very tip of the iceberg with a lot of these technologies. The richer data is when you start to talk to people and uncover things that they haven't shared out on the internet about them and their work drivers, what they want from work, their capabilities, skills, context, things that you can't find on a resume. And in order to uncover those things, it needs to be an exercise where a human is sitting down and again, similarly to inside a company, doing this deep discovery with a human. And I've seen tools that are trying to replicate this by having AI conduct interviewing to gather that rich data because tech companies now are realizing, oh, there's like 50 AI sourcing startups and we're all playing the same pool of information. What do we fundamentally offer that's different? The smart ones are now saying, okay, well, we need to expand how we collect data. And Jack and Jill is a good example of an AI startup in the UK where Jack, I believe, is a recruiter and Jill um, represents the company or vice versa.
Right.
So one will work inside the company, one will interview the candidates, and they work together to get to that deeper source of information. The problem is that's not a very humane experience. And at the moment, the technology is not at a point where uh, humans inherently trust talking to an AI agent and are willing to divulge core truths about why am I a passionate human? It just feels inorganic. And I've been through the process. It's cool, but it needs quite a lot of work. So long way to answer your question, but I think that there are very distinct things that need to remain human-led, human-driven, and things that AI takes a bit more front stage, center stage, but it's at this stage, it's still all that should be an augmentation.
Yeah. it makes me, as you were saying that, I was thinking of a
Mm,
of how people, well, I'm thinking of myself actually, when I'm calling into I don't know, some business, a banker or something,
mm.
and I get all the prompts, press one for this, press two for that, and it's efficient for the company, I'm sure. But sometimes I'm going through that, I'm like, "Ah, I just say representative, where no matter what the
Yeah,
issue is,
yeah,
just so I can get
yeah.
to a human being that I want to talk to. And I imagine that um, although some job
Mm,
seekers don't mind talking to an AI to screen them, I guess it just depends uh, how much of the AI interaction the job seeker is willing to take for the system to be efficient overall. Because no matter how powerful the AI is, if the end user, the job seeker in this case, doesn't want to engage, then how useful is your tool? What do you think of that?
right. Yeah. So some of these tools are getting pretty uncanny, to be fair.
Yeah,
And some of these voice agents are pretty spectacular with how realistic they are in the tones and the
very
taking a
true.
breath. And so I'm interested to know what the sentiment's going to be when you really can't tell the difference. And,
Ooh.
when you can't tell the difference over the phone, I think humans are going to be more open and obliged to sharing more and more information. And I think it's a trust thing. It's getting comfortable with it. We're very early in this race and this experience of divulging information to things that are inhuman, that are trying to be human. And I think with the advent of more familiarity with these tools, and I mean, it won't be long before we have walking robots in our house that are doing our dishes, right? So that's going to happen
Right.
probably in the next 10 to 15, 20 years, where it's going to be commonplace. I think humans will naturally develop a familiarity where they're willing to trust. So projecting out decades, it's highly possible that the AI will augment more and more. Um, but what's important is how it's augmenting. And again, it's AI is a tool, and I'm more than excited and willing to allow AI to do more and more of my work, provided it doesn't take away from the true outcome of what I'm trying to achieve, which is really effective hiring. That's the North Star. And the problem at the moment is that a lot of these AI tools are not being deployed with that North Star in mind. They're being deployed, like I said, for speed and metrics which are not indicative of actual sustainable hiring practices that improve companies and the well-being of candidates and everything else. So if you can start developing solutions that are even AI led in the future, but are based on sound principles, then if we're still able to achieve the mission, then that's fine. There will always be a cohort of people though that will want to speak to humans. There's a cohort of people that still want to drive manual cars. There's a cohort of people that um, yearn for more human interaction. And I think the commoditization of things is dependent on, I guess that my take here is it's interesting. Like the more we advance in tech and the more things become automated, I feel like the more me personally I yearn for things that are inherently human to be able to have a break from that stuff and
Sure.
have polarity in how I live, right? So I think it'd be great if humans could always be in the seat and be the ones that are doing all of these interviews and running this process. But it's going to be very interesting over the next 10, 20 years to see what course it takes. I'm hedging my bets on the fact that uh, AI will improve and will be able to augment a lot of the process when it comes to matching people to the right opportunities. But
Mm.
we still need humans involved to lead, to steer, to be in the loop, and ultimately to be the ones sitting face to face conversing, because you're not joining a company of robots. There are going to be people in the company. And when you have a group of humans together that feel connected to one another, I don't think it's something that you can replicate by having AI agent colleagues, right? Because it just doesn't sit well. But I could be totally wrong in
No,
20
no,
years'
I
time.
think you hit on
So,
something something very true there. I think experience. I know that there's been a trend of people who would take vacation just for the experience themselves. They'd rather have the experience of going
Mm,
on a trip than actually buying a bunch of gifts. And
mm,
as you were talking, I was reminded of a time when I was in Hong Kong and I came across this restaurant where you would touch buttons on a kiosk outside the restaurant, select what you wanted to buy for dinner or lunch, whatever,
mm.
slide your card through, and then you get a receipt, and then you walk in and you pick it up off the counter when it's ready, and then you walk out, right? And then you could, and then say you compare that experience to going literally across the street, and people are just sitting around talking, hanging out, having a good
Yeah,
time, and it's like one side is more efficient, but the other side has a lot of people there and a lot of business. So it's, I think that's where companies find themselves in a conundrum, or will find themselves in a conundrum. We can be super efficient and get all these things done, but if people aren't having a good time, if they're not reacting well to the technology and to our processes, what good is it? And it makes me wonder if the more advanced we become with technology, the more we're going to appreciate the human connection, to your point. Maybe to a point
mm,
where, and this would be really wild, if a company stopped using automated telephones and went back to having people, human operators, switching calls, that would be
yeah,
very inefficient, but I think some people would appreciate it.
yeah. I agree. It's fascinating to think about when a society and when something gets so optimized to the point that the analog way of doing things starts to have more inherent value because
Yeah.
a human, okay, this is a good analogy, like art, particularly sculpting. I was watching this documentary a few months ago, and it was talking about how robots are disrupting uh, the sculpting industry in Italy, which is like highly regarded as, it's just like it has this history, right? Of like these these artisans that have been sculpting passed down for decades and years. And these robots can come and do the same thing in like a week that it takes one of these guys a year to do, right?
Right. Right.
People are always inherently going to pay more for the experience of having something that a human put their time and effort into because it carries more inherent value. And that's just the way we've always thought about these types of things. I mean, we attribute value to people and their time and when they've been involved in a process because we are a human and we appreciate that. It's not to say that there isn't a time and a place to have a $100 marble sculpture that could be worth 50,000 if it was made by hand, but it looks exactly the same. But there's something different about saying that was made by someone and I respected enough to pay for it. And they respected it enough to put their time and effort into making it. And there's a mutual connection there between me and the artist. It runs deeper than just a very transactional engagement. And it's the same as your analogy with the restaurant, right? Or just the food and beverage where you have this option, like similar to when you go to a pub or a bar, you have the QR code, right? I don't want
Yeah.
to scan it. I don't want to scan a QR code and get a beer. I want to go to the bartender. I want to say, "How you doing? What's up? How's things? How's work been?" Oh, yeah, no, have a chat. Like, I don't go a bar to avoid humans. I go to a bar to drink, to socialize, to enjoy myself. Although there's a tipping point. If the line at the bar is huge and the my value on that connection is here, but the efficiency provided by that QR code starts to increase in value. Now I've got a utility to use the other option because for me and my situation, which is different between everyone, the other one outweighs the other one, so I'm making an executive decision. And I think you can apply that principle really to any deployment of technology. It's like I love driving manual cars. But they may get to a point where it doesn't make any sense because I can't get a certain amount of repairs or something changes in the vehicles or the roads or something and it just doesn't make sense. The love and the passion for that will be trumped by the utility of the efficiency or the ease of the other option and adopting the technology. So I think people always have a choice. And that's the important thing, is that you're aware that you have a choice. And with recruiting, I think the difference is, and the danger is that the technology where it's at right now is fundamentally built on top of a broken process, and people don't have choice. That's the problem. People are forced into using it. And I've seen technology, the companies now releasing these products where they literally call out on their website, game the system, beat the game of recruiting. Like this nomenclature that is just so toxic and absurd. And it's even calling out within itself the fact that this thing is broken and you can game it if you use this tech to pedal faster. It's not attacking the symptomatic, actual core issues of the principles of what's wrong with recruiting and how we can actually fix it. So people are forced into it. Recruiters are forced to use AI screening tools because of the influx of these thousands of resumes that are created by these AI tools. And
Sure.
the candidates are forced to use those tools as well because their colleagues are using them and they're put out the race if they don't. So it's a lose-lose.
Well, is this at the crux of it a cultural issue or a technological issue? Because what's the technology without the people, and what's the people without the culture? What do you think?
I think it's a good call out. I think it's both. I think simply put, we have been running a playbook since the 1700s. Ever since the dawn of the industrial era, where we started to bring people into factories and we needed to quickly ascertain whether someone could build something or assemble something quickly, we
Mm,
would say, hey, where have you worked previously? This factory and that factory. Okay, so you assembled the same part here and here? Yeah. 95% sure you could probably do the same thing in this factory. Whereas now, we're not assembling parts. At least the vast majority of us are in knowledge work. We use our brains. We are providing value in teams. There are customers we directly deal with. I'm not working in an assembly line. I'm dealing with clients and customers. Things are dynamic. Technology is increasing the pace of change. Everything is so turbulent. It's like spaghetti now rather than assembling something very specific. And
mm.
we still use the same level of screening and context, which is very surface level, to identify if someone's the right fit for a context, not a factory that is similar to all the other factories, a very unique business that's highly, highly variable compared to the business next to it. Um, and we expect that that's sufficient enough, where it's grossly underserving both the company and the candidate. And when you do that, you also underserve the client. And it becomes this flywheel of pain for every stakeholder.
Why Will of Pain? I put that on a t-shirt.
Flywheel of pain, yeah, that's it.
Wow. I was at a conference recently, the Recruiting Innovation Summit, really cool conference.
Mm,
And they had a panel discussion and talking about AI. Again, you can't get away from it. But
mm.
they were talking about the liability someone may have when using certain tools. How do you think companies could safeguard themselves from getting into some sort of legal trap just for using a tool that may or may not be compliant?
I think that's a hard one to navigate because these tools are so fresh and they're just getting updated consistently, aren't they? In their
Yeah.
abilities and their integration with everything that we do. So it's a tough one. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I think like you said, it's everywhere. You have no choice but to leverage them at this point in time. I think the best thing you can do is go back to first principles, like we've been talking about, and do the due diligence, do the discovery, come from it from a place of genuinely seeking to understand when it comes to recruitment, what are we offering, and then what do we need, and conducting a degree of matchmaking. And if you have humans in the loop, and you can be shown to be putting some guardrails in place as to not be, human in the loop, as to not be letting AI be leading but augmenting. If you can prove that, and that you're not, I guess, delegating the ultimate analysis to AI in terms of judging whether someone is a excellent fit versus a poor fit to a certain degree. I don't know. It's hard to quantify, but you just need to find where that line is and
Yeah.
be able to defend it really with the humans and the due diligence that you've done. If you just fully offload to AI and let it do everything, then you're putting yourself in hot water. Yeah, that's a hard one
And
to navigate.
yeah, and I think that's probably depending on the culture of the company, and each company is
Mm.
different. So there's that. Um, for maybe I don't say the beginning of time, but certainly for a great deal of time, people have been saying that the resume is dead, or it should die in some way. Could you imagine a resume-less recruitment process? How would that look if you could imagine that?
Oh yeah. I'm very keen for that reality.
Okay.
When I say resume less, and when I think about resume less, it's more about expanding on the resume and taking
Okay.
it to its next generation. Uh, the purpose of the matchmaking process is to identify and market and sell and communicate with radical transparency and polarity what the context is of the company, and not just the company, the team, the people in the team, the dynamics, the social elements, like everything about the work product. If you can communicate that, then that's the first part of the equation. And that has nothing to do with your resume, but that is the first part of the equation to killing the resume off or enhancing it completely. Now, the next part is if we are able to attack the problem with that level of clarity from the company, then that's one side of the matchmaking done. Now you need to take the candidate side and really start to unpack, all right, well, how do we get that level of clarity from the candidate? And typically that is the resume. That's what we
Mm,
take. And
mm,
it's very surface level, one dimensional, heavily biased. It's theater right now. It's like we've said, it's been completely crapped on by AI. But what that resume in this paradigm really is doing and what it needs to be doing is reciprocating with the same amount of data that we've collected on the company with what that person wants from work, what drives them, their emotional drivers of what we call work drivers at SuperHired. And we base it off the jobs to be done framework. So you have social, functional, emotional drivers of why someone works. And we all have them. There's reasons why I subscribe to the current work I'm at. And everyone that's listening and anyone that exists that currently is employed is choosing to subscribe to their company for a variety of reasons. We need to understand why. We need to understand what has gone poorly, what has gone well in the past. But more importantly, we need to understand there and then what do they want, and into the future, projecting out what are they likely to want. Resume doesn't hit on any of that. Resume is a snapshot from the past with zero context about anything. It's completely useless in that regard. So, in order to get that level of data and to be doing that level of discovery with the candidates, that's challenging. But what we found is once you do the first piece from the company's perspective and you can sell and market your work product with clarity and transparency, you'll already find that people are coming to you throughout an interview process and they're like, wow, I really have a lot of understanding of what you're offering here. And I'm willing and able to talk at length more than I otherwise would because of the information that you've shared ahead of time. This isn't just some like random apply on LinkedIn. This is like, here's a deck on the company and its values. Here's the team dynamics that you've been joining. Here's, all of these characteristics about what the context of the company demands and will demand. And here's what a good fit will likely look like and what will not like what you probably not going to get from the company and what a poor fit looks like. So when a candidate has that, they're willing to divulge much more information. And we're finding that getting that level of data from the candidate is informing us to make better hiring decisions, but also like candidates and humans, like we're not used to thinking about that stuff. So a lot of the time when we ask candidates these type of questions, they're like, wow, I've never been told to kind of rank my priorities with regards to what I'm actually looking for at work at the core. So it's an art of self-discovery and facilitating that for the candidates. But when you have both of those data pools, that's when you can start to use AI. And that's when it gets super interesting. But you've done the legwork already before you use AI, right? So, but that's when you
Right.
can start to do the matchmaking, and that's when you can get some really interesting results.
Yeah, I think interesting is the word, because not only with that kind of thinking, not only are you finding people that are qualified right now, but you're sort of weighing how they'll be qualified in the future as well. Because the presumption is they're going to stay with the company at least for a period of time, and you want to be
Mm.
able to spot people that are good now and to be good tomorrow. This has been a fascinating conversation. We have to do a part two of this at
Mhm.
some point. If somebody wanted to get in contact with you for more information or just to continue this conversation with you themselves, how can they find you online?
Just through LinkedIn is the easiest. I'm fairly active. And yeah, if it's a company or an individual, like a candidate talent, then they can go to our website, superhired.ai, and subscribe. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best bet.
Very good. Well, Josh Hill of SuperHired, thank you for your time and for being on the Jim Stroud podcast.
Thanks, Jim. It's a good combo. Thank you.
Well, my time is up. I thank you for yours. I'll see you again real soon right here with a brand new episode of the Jim Stroud Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached by email at jimstroud@jimstroud.com. And one last favor, if I may ask, please rate this podcast. 5 stars is preferred, but please comment with your honest opinion. I really appreciate that. All right? Okay, until next time, bye-bye.